to Garden Angels. Now, if you're starved for space in your backyard, but you still want to grow your own veggies, stick around because I've got some great space-saving ideas.
And if you like rolling around on a piece of lawn, I'll be showing you some great new turf on the market and also showing you some really interesting feature plants for your own backyard.
And I'm going to get stuck into some planting with bulbs for rich summer colour. All this and more on Garden Angels!
You don't have to try so hard, just let it happen to you. I'll make it easy for you.
You know, this is a pretty typical lawn right across Australia. Under the Hills Hoist, there's a very compacted area, and grass finds it really hard to grow. So the first tip in spring is to aerate. Now you could just aerate with an old garden fork, and then when you feed later, the fertiliser can get right into the roots where it's needed. The other important thing, and with couch lawns you can do it, you can plant these little runners out. They're new plants and they'll grow in no time at all. Now the other way you can aerate your lawn is with these groovy sandals. They've got spikes on the back. They're really, I think, the most fun way of getting the aeration right into the roots. Once it's all aerated, you need to give it a really good feed with a rejuvenating seaweed. I think this is one of the best ways to rejuvenate a tired lawn. This was the family's pride and joy, this lawn, but now, with years of constant abuse, the kids, the dogs, the parties, it's now looking really, really bad. There's no hope for it. It needs a complete and utter makeover, and we've got some great ideas in store. You know what, when you ring your local turf supplier, they're going to give you heaps of options. Kikuya's the cheapest option, but really you'd be mad to choose it because you'll spend your whole life mowing. Couch is great, it's really soft, but it doesn't keep its green during the winter months, and it takes a long time to green up. So your best choices are softleaf buffaloes. Here's two good choices: Sir Walter and Palmetto. Hard-wearing, long-lived, they really are drought tolerant, so you won't have to water as often, and you don't have to mow them as much either. But one of the hardest wearing lawns is one called zoysia. It's great for sports grounds, so it'll be great if you've got lots of kids and dogs. But you know what? None of these turfs suit my purposes. Now this is the one I've chosen. It's the latest and the greatest turf on the market. It's the Rolls Royce of buffaloes. It's called King's Pride, and the reason why I love this one is it keeps its green right through winter. It performs just as well in sun as it does in shade, so it's going to be perfect for my garden. And yes, well, before I lay it, I've got a lot of work to do. You know, if you're interested in paving, stick around next week because we'll be doing Paving 101. But now I've got to lay a lawn. Lawn you just can't lay on any normal soil. You've got to get some nice turf underlay. It's got plenty of sand in it to keep it well drained. So let's get laying. We just need to spread it right around here, about 50 mil thick, and then I can start staggering the turf rolls. Don't forget the water crystals. This is the secret ingredient. And I like to swell them up first with a bit of water and seaweed. And that means they hydrate first and they don't take away all the nutrient and the water from the roots. Now for the fun bit. I love laying lawn because it just looks $1 million instantly. It's important to stagger the rolls so they knit together really well. And if you do have to cut them, don't cut them on the outside because that one will be too thin, it'll dry out quicker. Now the final step in our masterpiece is just planting up the little cracks with some steppable herbs. They'll release a lovely fragrance. Isn't it amazing what a bit of inspiration and elbow grease can do in one weekend?
Now Now these are of course beautiful spring flowering daffodils and jonquils, which are really cheery flowers. But you get a display like this by getting bulbs into the ground in autumn for spring flowering. Now you can get that same vibrant display of colour with summer flowering bulbs. So I'm going to show you some great varieties to get in the ground now for the warmer months. Now liliums have to be one of the most flamboyant bulbs. I've got two of the most popular types here. The white one is what they call a Christmas lily. Now it's so called because of the time of year that it flowers, and it's often used of course as decoration on the Christmas table. But it has these really luminous white flowers and a fragrance that scents the entire room. Now that big pink one there is an oriental lily. Now the oriental lilies are like the divas of the lily world. They've got really big flowers. In fact, so big that the plant can become a little bit top heavy. So it's a good idea to actually stake the plants when you're growing them in the garden. And one of the cheapest and easiest ways to grow your lilies is of course from bulbs, which you can get through mail order or through your nurseries at this time of year for planting now. Now a good general rule of thumb when it comes to the depth of planting is to plant them about 3 times as deep as they are wide. So for a lily about this size, you're looking at about 10 centimetres depth. So put in this kind of effort now, and in no time you'll have a display like this. Now dahlias are another summer flowering plant that have real modern appeal, even though they're quite a traditional old flower. Now let me just show you some of the great varieties that are available. You can get pom-pom type flowers like Lunar Light, right through to brilliant orange ones like Meadow Lee, but what I'm a real fan of are the dwarf types of dahlias. So the dwarf ones only get to about 1 metre or so tall. Now if you are planting into a perennial border or an area where you want to avoid disturbing other plants, then get your hands on a bulb planter like this. It's simple, you just plunge it into your garden bed, it holds onto the soil, and then you quite easily click it, and out comes the soil. Then you've got a beautiful planting hole. And if you're unsure which way to plant your bulbs or your tubers, then just put them in sideways. You'll find that they'll eventually find their way to the top all on their own. And if you've done that stupid thing that I've done before where you plunge a shovel into a garden bed and cut through bulbs that you didn't know were there, make sure you take the time to label your bulbs. Just like this. That way you'll never make that mistake again. Now, if you've only got space for one pot with one summer flowering bulb in it, then this is the guy for you. Now, it may not look like much now, but this is a hippeastrum. And in just 4 to 5 weeks, I promise you, if you plant this bulb now, it will emerge into wonderful, big, trumpet-like flowers just like this. Now, just one final tip for great-looking bulbs. The best thing you can do is feed them twice, both at planting time and then again as the bulbs begin to die down. And just another tip with your hippeastrums, they like to be planted with their neck just above the top of the soil. So there you have it, some of my favourite bulbs to get in the ground now for summer colour. So if you think ahead, you too can have colour like this in your place year round.
Definitely not Angel's headquarters when it comes to space, but if you've got a tiny little area just like this in the midst of a concrete jungle, you too can have your very own veggie plot. And I'm going to show you some clever little tricks in how to create that. Now we've got a few good ideas already happening in this really small space, but I'm going to definitely expand on them. You can try and get yourself a larger version of a strawberry pot and tier it with herbs. I've got some oregano here, thyme, rosemary up the top, and some perennial basil up the back. This is a great idea for your lettuce. It's rather decorative as well. Get yourself a nice large terracotta pot just like this. Putting in your very good quality potting mix. I'm mixing that in with a little bit of manure just for added nutrient. To make life easier for yourself, why not try lightweight containers so you can move your pots around? And another idea is put them close to where you're going to be harvesting. So right by the kitchen door or even on the balcony. Another plant that's very happy in pots is of course a citrus. I've got a lemon-lime combo here, and I have some nasturtiums, which are these little babies over here. Beautiful flower, sold as an annual, but believe it or not, you can eat the flowers and the foliage. They're great in salads. They add that wonderful splash of colour. The next little project is some simple broccoli troughs, or you could use cauliflowers, any of those real rosette forming plants. And if you don't believe me, that broccoli or cauliflower in fact will flower in pots, have a look at this. Great flower starting to appear, and it's just been grown on in a regular plastic pot. There you go. Now, doesn't this idea look fantastic? Really simple. All you need is some pieces of bamboo, tomato plant, and a lovely terracotta pot just like this one, which is quite deep. Now, you don't have to throw your basic garden principles out the window when you're planning a potted veggie garden. One of those principles is staggering your heights. That is, having your biggest, tallest plants at the back, stepping down to medium-sized shrubs, and then, of course, smaller growing herbs and veggies right down the front. Along here, I'm going to be climbing some peas, and then around the base of the plant, I'm going to be putting some parsley. I think this is ingenious, a herb ladder, but you could put different smaller growing vegetables in it. Wonderful structure, and it looks great too. Well, how about that? Not bad for half a day's work, and I think that it's really looking quite nice with all the matching terracotta. You've got height here with our beautiful climbing structures, an accent pot or two, and loads of herbs and veggies in our wonderful herb ladder. But stick around because there's plenty more green to be seen.
I've always been a tree spotter. I love navigating by trees. I love walking the streets and seeing what other people are growing in their gardens. And what I love the most is when I find that really special statement plant with the wow factor. Now, this tree was planted over 100 years ago, and what a great contrast to the architecture of those sandstone buildings. The waving branches and the silvery trunk are absolutely stunning. You don't need to buy garden sculpture when you can have a living sculpture. This is the dragon tree, and yes, it makes a great climbing tree, but it also makes an absolutely beautiful statement in your garden. Garden designers these days have become really clever in small spaces. I'm in the inner city where they've got the most beautiful little courtyard with one featured plant. Now, bamboo, I know you're probably thinking, oh, what an invasive weed, but this bamboo is doing a spectacular job. It's minimal, it's contemporary, they've repeated it, so they've got these lovely shadows on the wall. The vertical stems of the black bamboo are gorgeous. The sound as the wind comes through is absolutely stunning. And because they've used a black bamboo called Timor black, it's clumping, so it will never run and become an invasive weed. You just can't beat the sculptural agave for a real statement. Its bold, beautiful foliage is a great contrast to this charcoal stonework. And when it's planted en masse like this, it just says wow. And you know what? The best news is you just can't kill them. In a quarter-acre block, you've got a little bit more room to move. So you can choose a bigger flowering tree. Now, this tree is not about form or foliage. It's about flower and romance. It's the snow pear, and here it's planted with the white convolvulus and the very fragrant lavender, a great combination. Now, I think the reason why I like it mostly is the fact that it's just the anticipation of spring that it provides. See, it only flowers for 4 weeks a year, but it's just something extra special.
If you've got lots of dull, shady areas at your place where you think not much will grow, well, don't despair. With the right selection of tough plants, you can transform an empty area like this into a colourful oasis. Now, it's really important to get stuck into some good soil preparation when you're working in a shady area. Because remember, a lot of the plants that like shade grow naturally in woodland type situations. And remember that many of these plants that are growing in the shade are also competing with big trees for moisture. So getting organic matter into the soil helps the soil to hold on to more of that water. Now, hellebores are a brilliant plant for brightening up a shady area. And this is actually quite a new one. It's called ivory prince. And you can see why it's got beautiful ivory flowers. But they also, when they age, they go a little bit kind of pinky purple, and then eventually they age to green. And they love this type of situation. So beneath deciduous trees, where they're getting all that light come through in winter and early spring when they're flowering, and then of course they get beautiful summer shade. Now, if you want a foliage plant that does really well in this type of situation, you can't beat your heucheras. Now, this one is called mocha. It's called mocha because it has a lovely chocolatey coloured foliage to it. It does have a flower in the autumn time, a little tiny bell-shaped flower, but it is one of those plants that you would grow for its foliage alone, and it forms beautiful mountains. Okay, now if you really want to bring some light to shady areas, then try and grow some light foliage plants or even variegated plants like this. Now, this is a lamium. It's one called orchid frost. It has this really pretty spike of lilac-coloured flowers from about late spring through to autumn. And the nice thing about this plant is it's fast-growing in the shade, and it forms a really lovely weed-suppressing mat. I think it's always good to take a look at how your spacing is. I think I've done an all right job, so now it's time to get stuck into some planting. Now, when a plant's been really well grown like this one has, and you can see lots of nice fine feeder roots, then you don't need to tease out the root system. In fact, you only would ever need to touch the root zone if it's been badly grown and it's actually root bound, so you see the roots encircling the plant. Just finally, a good layer of organic mulch just to help to conserve moisture and of course help to suppress weeds. But this one actually comes with a wetting agent as well to help water penetration. So these plants should get off to a good start. Now, just one final thing. When you are dealing with shady areas, you do sometimes get invasion from slugs and snails. So you might just want to sprinkle a few snail and slug pellets around. But the good news is that with shady areas, you do often get less weed growth just because there's less light penetrating for germination of those weed seeds. So, there you have it. My little area that was once dull and lifeless is now something a little bit special.
It's your life's ambition to have the greenest, most pristine lawn in the whole street. And you achieve it. You lay that lawn, you water it diligently every second day, you mow it every single week, and it's looking fantastic. And then something changes. You become complacent. The weeds start appearing, the bindi, ryegrass. You even forget what kind of lawn it is that you laid. And then the kitties and the dogs start wearing paths in all different directions. And you think to yourself, there's got to be an alternative. Believe it or not, this is a patch of synthetic lawn. Now, this turf alternative is pretty good. It's made an old gardener like me nearly change my mind. It's very fine in texture, has difference in colour of the leaf blades, believe it or not, and you can get it in long forms like your buffaloes as opposed to this really fine cooch look. It's by a place called Tiger Turf, and this one is called Meadow. And if this is not your cup of tea, but you still want a beautiful shade of green in your backyard, why not go a ground cover for a turf alternative? So here's a great selection of lawn alternatives, and as you can see, most of them are ground covers. The first one I'd like to show you is a beautiful native called native violet, suitably enough because of these very pretty violet-like flowers, which flower most of the year, believe it or not. Now, this isn't really ideal for a high traffic area, but it's perfect for a shady spot in the garden. If you're after a really hardy plant for a lawn substitute, why not try good old reliable mondo grass? It has a really tough, gritty root system which will tolerate quite a bit of traffic. Now, there are two forms that would really be ideal for this job. The regular mondo grass, which is a little bit longer, or you could go the dwarf. As you can see here, en masse looks quite spectacular. Now, they may not look like much on their own, but planted en masse, baby's tears form a beautiful carpet of emerald green, better suited for the lower traffic areas or around stepping stones to meander in the garden. Another tough ground cover that's perfect for a lawn alternative because of its tight foliage is a dichondra or kidney weed. And have a look at this form. It's called Silver Falls, also a dichondra, but this beautiful silver foliage. Or why not add fragrance with your every step by planting out a herb lawn, just like this beautiful chamomile with its ever so gentle, fragrant foliage. Or you'll have plenty of time on your hands with the little maintenance you'll be doing by planting a thyme lawn, of course. This one in particular is ideal, called creeping thyme. Now, I know what you're thinking. These are herbs. They can't be trodden all over there just for cooking. But that is totally wrong. These are quite happy to be trampled all over. Well, there you have it. There's a few options for you if you decided to ditch the lawn. So, girls, I think it's time for the gazebo to get a bit of a revamp.
Yes, looking a bit bare. What do you reckon? A bit of colour?
I want to be there for Christmas Day, so let's get it ready for Christmas.
Sounds good. But first things first, next week's show, I've got some fabulous garden lighting ideas, how to enjoy your space at night.
I'm getting down on my knees and paving, giving you step-by-step tips on how to pave that outdoor entertaining area.
And I'm going to take you into the secret world of Cymbidium orchids. Well, thanks for watching, guys, and hopefully we'll see you all again next week
on Garden Angels.